A crossroads for education in Texas. State money going to private schools.
We want to have a choice for all of our parents to take their kids to the best school possible.
In this pivotal moment for learning,
Help provide a private school experience for students who couldn't afford it otherwise.
we're looking at the fight over school choice.
I'm all for giving parents choices. I just think our parents need to be really careful.
When you lose 5 students, that's a significant chunk of money.
The questions parents have for the year ahead.
I'm just concerned that it's going to end up being a coupon for families that are already in private school.
And what the data says could happen in our schools.
I think when the vouchers are, when they are approved, that it could be 3 to 4 years before we see a significant drop in enrollment.
It's all in a special edition of The Learning Curve.
Hi everyone, my name is Lacey Beasley and I've been taking the lead on lots of education stories recently. A really hot topic in Texas has been the education savings account programs. A lot of people have been asking questions about it and we've been breaking down those answers. So I'm here with Andrea Lucia, she's on our I-team, and Jack Fink, who's our Eye on Politics reporter. Andrea, you've been looking at numbers and statistics and how surrounding states with programs like this have been dealing with it.
I mean, absolutely. We are really curious to see how school choice plays out here in Texas. We've been looking for those objective data points, the numbers that are going to tell us what kind of impact it has on our students here, on our communities here. We have 2 different political parties here in Texas who have 2 very different predictions of how this will play out. We don't know if it's going to be somewhere in the middle, if it's going to be better than people are expecting, worse than people are expecting. But I know when it comes to politics, I'm going to defer to you, Jack. I did want to ask you, though, Lacey talked about education savings accounts. I think I used the term school choice. Some people say school vouchers. We're all talking about the same thing, though, right?
Yes. I mean, we're talking about, depending on the political party, the terminology they use. So the Republicans like to use the term school choice because it has a positive connotation. They support that. Democrats, on the other hand, like using vouchers. It has a negative connotation. But what we're talking about, as Lacey said, is education savings accounts, which is a specific kind of voucher that's administered by the state. And so now we're going to see this is going to be the largest such program in the United States.
And we have a breakdown for everyone when it comes to how parents will be impacted and how schools will be impacted.
The headlines. This will not be available for the upcoming school year. The Education Savings Account Program, or ESA, will begin the 2026-27 school year. For the next 2 years, starting in September, the state of Texas will set aside $1 billion of taxpayer money into the fund. Most families will get about $10,000 per year per child, while disabled students will receive $30,000 a year, and homeschool students will get $2,000 a year. In addition to tuition, the money can be used on education-related expenses, like textbooks, uniforms, transportation, and even meals provided by the private school. The program is open to all school-age children who are U.S. citizens or in the country lawfully. In the case there are more applicants than funds, there will be a lottery system based on certain qualifications, including siblings of children participating in the ESA program, children with a disability where the household income is at or below $160,000 for a family of 4. Students would then be prioritized based on household income. It's important to note, only 20% of the total ESA budget can be used for students from households making more than $160,000, and public school students who switch to private schools will take priority. We do know the state will have to file an annual report on all participating children. Let's talk about private schools. If they choose to participate in the ESA program, they must be in operation for at least 2 years and be accredited. Private schools still have the right to deny applicants using money from the ESA.
And Jack, this has been an ongoing conversation for years.
Well, it's interesting when you look at it politically. Texas has been, until now, the largest Republican state in the United States that didn't have this kind of school choice program. There are over 30 states that have it. And so when Governor Abbott tried to change this 2 years ago, there were still enough Republicans to join Republicans who killed it. And so the governor set out to change that, and he ran against all the Republicans who opposed it. And that strategy worked. Take a look.
to provide every parent with the ability to choose the best education option for their child.
One of Governor Greg Abbott's top priorities in the 2023 legislative session became education savings accounts for a wide number of students to attend private school.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
The governor hit the road, crisscrossing the state to sell his plan. While the bill passed in the Senate, it failed in the House during the regular session. So Abbott continued to push for education savings accounts during special sessions.
One of the freedoms we believe in is the freedom of parents to choose what is right for their child.
But during the fourth special session, 21 House Republicans joined all Democrats to sack the bill after a debate mostly between GOP members.
Mike Olcott.
Instead of calling a fifth special session, Governor Abbott went on offense during the 2024 Republican primary. Records from OpenSecrets.org show the governor received more than $10 million in donations from Pennsylvania billionaire Jeff Yass between October 2023 and April of last year to get his school choice bill passed. Abbott campaigned for Republicans who supported education savings accounts and ran against the incumbents who did not. After the primary and runoff, the governor said he believed he had the votes needed to pass his school choice bill in the upcoming legislative session.
The majority of Texans support school choice.
Fast forward to his State of the State address in February, where education savings accounts became his top priority this session. Unlike 2 years ago, Democrats in the House this year would have to fight against it by themselves, without help from rural Republicans.
Voucher scams are not school choice.
Democrats and those who oppose the school choice bill made themselves heard on the day the bill went to the full House for a historic vote.
This vote is about choice, so let the people choose and let them vote.
Nearby, the governor gathered with House Republicans to give them a pep talk.
So we just talked about how everything that they've been doing is just common sense.
During their meeting, President Trump called in to press his case.
But this is a big vote today.
Hours later, after all the debating, the moment of truth.
This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show the speaker.
For the first time in the House, the measure passed.
There being 85 ayes and 63 nays, SB 2.
1 week later, the Texas Senate, which has previously passed this legislation, made it official.
There being 19 ayes and 12 nays, school choice has come to Texas.
So we certainly saw the dramatic difference this session because 86 Republicans voted for this school choice program, education savings accounts, 10 more than necessary, and all Democrats were going to vote against it. We knew that. Only 2 Republicans voted against it this time. One of those was the former Speaker, Dade Phelan.
And the other one
was Gary Van Dever.
Gary Van Dever, that's right. And so I talked to him. I was in his office, and I was kind of looking around, and I realized Gary Van Dever, he's from East Texas, and he is a former teacher, a former principal, a former superintendent, and he's a Republican. And I wasn't there to interview him about this, but I had to ask him, what was that like? Where did he stand on this? And he said because of his background in education, he just couldn't support school vouchers. And here I have a clip of him talking about his thinking on this.
A small rural district in my area, if they lost one child per grade out of their school to the voucher program and had one child per grade, well, kindergarten through 12, that's 13 children at $10,000 each, that's $130,000. Well, that small district, that is a huge chunk of their budget. And they can't cut a teacher. You only lost one child out of that classroom. You can't cut a teacher. You can't cut a bus route. You can't close a classroom and turn off the lights. Their cost will not go down $1, but they suddenly have $130,000 less in revenue.
Yeah, and Van Dever, he faced a tough primary, but in his case, he won.
I think he touched on a good point too, talking about the rural school districts. I also talked to Waxahachie ISD. We'll see that later on in the show. That's about 11,000 students. The CFO of Waxahachie ISD said something similar. He was like, yes, it's going to be a big chunk of money whenever X amount of students leave. However, he was saying they're looking at cutting teachers possibly. So that's something that we'll see flesh out in the next couple months, in the next year or so.
One thing I would point out, as far as that bill, the legislature built in a floor so that districts would still retain some of the funding when students left to go to private schools to try to protect them a little bit. But you know, what's interesting is this fight may not be over yet. I'll have more on that coming up. Welcome back to The Learning Curve on CBS News Texas. We're talking about the school choice program that passed, and boy, let me tell you, this really proved to be the most contentious issue during this past legislative session between Republicans and Democrats.
I've been talking to a lot of families who are both sides of the political aisle, and they're really digging into, is public education the best route for their children, or is it private education? And that conversation is still going on.
Okay, but you said before we went to break that this might not be over. So that's what I'm curious about, because honestly, as a parent, the political process just goes on and on forever. And now we're looking at the legal process, right?
Well, this may end up in the courts because the chairman of the Texas Democratic Party told me that they may file a suit to try to block this legislation, this program from happening. The Republican chairman of Texas, Abraham George, said, bring it.
We want to have a choice for all of our parents to take their kids to the best school possible. Every single Texan should have that choice. This is not that. This is, we're with 100,000 kids, $1 billion. It's just really a pilot program. So we're excited to see how this goes for the next couple of years and what we need to change and fix in the next session. So this is a huge win for the Republican Party and the conservatives.
Y'all are calling it school choice, but I don't really understand why you're calling it that. It has nothing to do with school choice. And states like Arkansas, where they've passed these bills, 95% of the people who use these vouchers already have their kids in private school. So really, it's a new entitlement program where rich people get to benefit on the backs of working class people. And so, sure, I'm happy to talk about that new entitlement program that Republicans just passed for welfare for the well-off. We're going to do everything we can to roll those types of programs back. But unfortunately, Democrats don't have the levers of power to try to control that. At this point, there isn't a lot that we can do on the policy front other than trying to litigate, which you very well may see.
Let me ask you about that, because on what legal grounds do you think there are that Democrats can push back and file a lawsuit against the state when 30 other states already have this kind of or a similar program?
Well, what makes Texas unique is that you have a constitutional right in Texas to a public education and to a well-funded public education at that. And we're currently looking to figure out if there are ways for us to accomplish that. We're going to do whatever we can to try to protect community public schools. But let's be honest, it's a bit of a Hail Mary right now. Whenever you elect people to public office, there are going to be consequences to that. And unfortunately, any community who loves their public schools or their public school teacher are about to learn what happens when you elect Republicans to public office.
I spoke with your counterpart in the Texas Democratic Party, and he told me that he believes this bill is just an effort to, what he says, hurt public schools and to keep wages down in the state of Texas. He also said that Democrats are considering filing a suit against the state to try to block this. What's your reaction to both of those things?
I don't understand that messaging at all. So Democrats want to say we don't want to give any choice to our parents. We want you to send your kids to public schools. A lot of them are failing public schools. If you take a look at Dallas County, if that's what they want to take it to the court and to the public square, I'm glad they're doing it, because that will get more people to come to Republican side and say, okay, we want free market, we want school choice. I want to be able to make the choice for my child to go study whatever I believe it's the best interest of my kid. So I welcome that lawsuit. I think it's a really bad idea for them, but it's good for us.
The public didn't want this. We tried to simply take it to a vote of the public, and Republicans wouldn't even let you vote on it. So they know it's unpopular. We know it's unpopular. The difference is they don't want you to have a say on it, and we do.
One of the things that I thought was very interesting is when the Democratic chairman, Kendall Scudder, said this is a legal Hail Mary, because we don't know if they're even going to still go forward with it, but it is an option, obviously, that they're looking at. But it may be their last gasp to try to fight this off.
How long are we expecting this lawsuit to potentially play out?
If they go ahead and file it, I mean, this could take some time. Ultimately, I think it would come down to the Texas Supreme Court to sort this all out.
I have to say, I think as a parent, most people just want to know, like, they want to plan for their kids' education. They want to plan for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3, 4. And it's hard when this is playing out and you don't really have a definitive answer on, is this going to be available? And then the other big issue is, how much is private school going to cost? What private schools are going to accept this? And how much does it take off the price? Because some of the tuitions around here are really high. I was calling around to different schools in our area, and I got a sense of what those are. We'll look at the numbers when we come back. Welcome back. We've been talking about school choice, school vouchers, whatever you want to call it. I know there's a lot of parents thinking, okay, if I get $10,000 knocked off private school tuition, how much is left to pay? Is that going to cover everything? And the answer is, in most cases, no. I looked around for tuition rates at 45 schools in our area. Put them all out.
In North Texas.
In North Texas. And here's what I found. Essentially, a big range. Kindergarten tuition was between $8,500 and $33,000. 12th grade tuition was between $9,000 and $42,000.
That's college tuition.
Right, and you would know.
That's college tuition, yeah. We're done now, but yeah, that's a lot of money.
So of these 45 schools, though, 2 of them had tuition below $10,000 a year for K through 12. The 2 of the ones that I found. 5 hit that $39,000, $40,000 mark, which was incredible. But there's also other variables in there, right? There's additional costs. There is additional fees for, you have to pay a fee to apply. You have to pay a fee to enroll. Some of them have facility use fees, technology
uniforms,
fees.
Field trips,
right.
All of that.
Absolutely. They all come with costs. Transportation, which in public school, a lot of the time busing is paid for. That's generally not the case in private school. I did find some things that could lower the cost. A lot of these schools do have need-based scholarships that they offer, so you can come down on the number a bit there. Some of them have sibling discounts. Some of them have parishioner discounts if you're a member of the church that runs the school. And some of them, not a lot, but some do use the free and reduced cost lunch program. So it's hard to get a sense, but just looking at the numbers, there is a wide range. And there's also no guarantee that they're going to play ball. They're going to accept these vouchers.
Right, and the other thing too is that the law allows for parents to, let's say they want to use the money for uniforms, they can. If they want to use it for the application fee, just the other associated costs, they can do that.
But how much money are you going to have left for those associated costs after tuition?
And that's for the parents to figure out.
Welcome back. This is The Learning Curve. I'm Andrea Lucia. I'm with the CBS News Texas investigative team, and I'm here with Lacey Beasley, our lead education reporter here, and Jack Fink from Eye on Politics. And we're here because we are committed to education. We're looking into the issue of school choice, school vouchers, whatever you want to call it. And it's interesting what's going on right now. This isn't going to take effect for a year, but as I've spoken to schools in the area. Right now, they are evaluating this program, how it's going to affect them, and they're trying to decide if they're going to accept these vouchers, accept these funds. And Jack, is there anything in the bill that requires them to?
No, I mean, private schools don't have to be a part of this if they don't want to. They'll look it over and figure it out. And this is something that the Texas Comptroller's Office, which is now required to build this entire program from the ground up, they're going to figure out how many schools are going to apply and want to be a part of this, how many parents are going to apply for their students. So this is something that's happening right now. They'll have until June 15th to get this up and running.
Well, and how many seats will be available at private schools? Because as you can imagine, private schools haven't been sitting around half empty waiting for vouchers to come through. They have full classes. I talked to a demographer, one of these guys, Bob Templeton, who for years have been studying how many kids are going to public school. And I asked him about the exodus, like what kind of exodus are we going to see from public schools when private schools have these vouchers? And here's what he had to say.
It's going to take some time for private school to really build the capacity to be able to take more kids. Most private schools that we interview and talk to, they're pretty much full and they don't really have much capacity to add on. So I think when the vouchers are, when they are approved, that it could be 3 to 4 years before we see a significant drop in the enrollment.
That conversation, of course, happened before the passage of the bill. But it's interesting, and I'm really curious how it's going to play out.
I've talked to private schools, talked to two specifically. One is a maybe on accepting vouchers. One is all in.
Yeah.
I've also talked to parents. Parents are having to do the legwork on this. They're researching, figuring out what is best for their students and for their family as a whole when it comes to these prices that we just looked at. It's so expensive for a lot of the average families.
Even if you have the voucher.
Yes, it's not going to cover half, maybe even a quarter of it, depending on what kind of private school you're looking at. So I have some thoughts from parents and schools that we can look at. Carla Balin is against. Greta Alexander is for.
I think it's setting a priority with funding that says a private school student is worth $10,000 to the state and a public school student is worth less than $7,000 to the state. The governor's pushed a lot of rhetoric that says that public schools are failing, public schools are hurting kids, and we're here to kind of just tell some positive stories of what's been happening. I actually have 2 kids in middle school, and they are at different middle schools even within my school district. One, she was built for school. She's, thriving in that environment. It's been really great. The other one was starting to struggle, and we were able to move him to another school that had a deeper fine arts program and a deeper theater program, where he has really just been able to take off and thrive there.
Private school was a must because of my own experience in high school, if I could go back that far. I was pregnant at 17, and by the time I graduated, I was pregnant again. And I was crying out for help. My mom was a single parent, 2 jobs, and trying to get in and talk to her was very hard. But I had no one at school to talk to either. So it was kind of like being in a box, without help. My son, he found drugs in 9th grade. He never recovered, and he died a couple of years ago. Had I had an opportunity with my son, I think things may have been different for him. I think that's the difference for me, to have somebody that's able to pay more attention. And we have some great teachers in public school, but unfortunately, they can't be attentive to everyone when they have 25 or 30 kids in one room.
The average student would receive about $10,000. Do you think that's enough to send a student to private school?
The private school that we attend now is 11. So I think that that's more than enough.
So if it's $11,000, that's great if you happen to have one that's in that range in your backyard. The average one by us is closer to $20,000 to $25,000 a year. And then that does not include activity fees, uniform fees, getting your kid to and from school. Low-income families really rely on public transportation to get their kids to public school right now. And so you're going to have to find a way. And the argument for that is always you can use an ESA or a voucher for transportation. Well, if your tuition is already more than that amount, there's not money left over for that. Unfortunately, I'm just concerned that it's going to end up being a coupon for families that are already in private school, just to cut the cost of what they're already doing, as opposed to offering like a true new choice to other families.
We have this myth that parents that send their kids to private school, are rich. And that's not the case. I'm not rich. I'm very, $35,000 a year. I cleaned restrooms because it was my choice for my child to have this education. So it's not just rich people that are trying to send their kids to a private environment. There's parents like me that didn't have an opportunity when we were growing up, and we see a better opportunity for our kids.
A lot of private schools are faith-based, and there's a little bit of a debate of should taxpayer dollars go to religious schools. Do you want your kids to learn religion in school?
Yes, yes I do.
I have a real problem with public dollars going to that. By law, your public schools are not teaching religion, and are open to families of all faiths, all backgrounds, all identities, all kids with all disabilities. My husband teaches in a public school and is a Christian himself. However, that is separate from his teaching identity. So he is not teaching religion, he's teaching math.
It takes a lot of research on the parents' behalf to find if they do have a child with special needs services, they need to research the correct school for them.
That's right.
The best needs for their child if they want a faith-based school.
Yes.
A lot of it falls on the parent to just research.
Exactly.
I wish and I hope that the program primarily helps families who would not otherwise be able to go to private school if that's what they wish. My concern is that a majority of that money is not going to go that way. I'm appreciative that the legislator put a 20% cap on families making over $160,000 accessing it. That cap expires in 2 years.
If we want to really look at what's public schools doing, not all of them, but the ones that are in Fort Worth now, I know everybody's seen the mayor. She's fighting for kids to learn how to read. I know kiddos right now that's getting ready to graduate high school that can't read.
Public and private school leaders still have a lot to figure out when it comes to the impacts of this ESA program and how it could impact their classrooms. Private schools need to decipher the state guidelines if they even choose to accept students with vouchers. Public schools could see a drop in state funding with that drop in enrollment. And I've spent months collecting thoughts from across the board. Here are two leaders within private schools. We have Deborah Hof, who's the headmaster of Selwyn School in Argyle, and Craig Smith, who's the head of school at Trinity Christian Academy in Willow Park. And I also talked to two other leaders within public schools. We have Mark Terry, who's with the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association, and Ryan Calden, who's the CFO of Waxahachie ISD. Right now, the ESA program brings more questions than answers for both sides of the debate.
We're excited about this. I think it's got the potential to do exactly what it is designed to do, and that's provide a private school experience, help provide a private school experience for students who couldn't afford it otherwise.
All of us at private are going to have different opinions. If I'm a for-profit school, that's a different conversation than if I'm a not-for-profit school. So I guess for me, it's a very back and forth kind of thing. Would I consider not taking it? Yeah. Very few, I'm not going to say none, I think it might be none, but very few independent day schools take any state or federal money. And we're not going to take any money if it means that we have to sidestep our mission.
The only academic requirement that I understand that's firm is that we supply testing results, again, from the testing platform that we choose. We supply that to the state for any student who is here on a voucher. So they don't determine what test we would take. There wouldn't be any STAR testing here. We have a different system. There's a lot of incidentals to be aware of, frankly, incidental expenses from uniforms to trips. We provide a great array of opportunities here, but there are some extra costs involved too. All private schools, I believe, should want is no harm to public schools, because that's where most of the kids are going to go.
Good public schools make good private schools. I would hate to ever see our public schools suffer, because any school that suffers means we all suffer. I think you're going to find that more private schools say no than you think.
Really, it's moving public money to private schools is the way I view it. In fact, the whole word school choice is pretty applicable. It's not parent choice. It is actually the school's choice. They don't necessarily have to tell you why you're not being accepted into the school.
Public education has always been that bellwether within the community that goes out and tries to do what's best for every student that shows up at their doors every day. We take all students, and it is our charge to make sure that all students receive a high quality education. I'm all for giving parents choices. I just think our parents need to be really careful.
When you lose 5 students, that's a significant chunk of money.
With the 6,000 basic allotments, 6,160, Waxahachie's losing $30,000 right there just with 5 students leaving?
Absolutely. In addition to the $1 billion that were set aside for the vouchers that easily could have gone into public education, it may cause us to have to look at reducing the number of staff that we have in certain areas. If we're held to an accountability standard, whether it's student academic performance, whether it's financial management, or any other metric the state wants to use, if it's good enough for public ed who's receiving taxpayer dollars, it should be good enough for private schools.
And I've done home visits at a homeless shelter. Now, that kid is not going to be able to access a private school. There's not going to be the transportation. Even with the voucher, he's not going to be able to afford the tuition for those schools. So I have a fundamental problem with saying that we're going to expand school choice and then limit who can get into a school. If you're going after kids in the neediest areas and they can't afford the tuition, what does it matter?
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting about one of the gentlemen who said about accountability, because the private schools do not have to follow the same rigid guidelines and accountability standards as public schools. And so I asked Republicans about this, and they said it's the parent who's going to have really the ultimate decision here, and the private schools will be held accountable by the parent, because the parent, if they don't like how that school is operating for their student, they can pull them.
But will they have the information that they need?
Well, they'll know how their students are performing.
I want to know how the school is doing before I put my kid in there.
Well, yeah, and that's, again, up to the parent to figure out. And you raised that point earlier. The parents are in control, and they are going to be the ones to figure this out for themselves.
I'll just say, as someone who focuses on data, it can be frustrating when we go into private businesses. It's not as easily available. It's not as easily available to know what's going on inside.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah. I know coming up, I'm going to ask you what you're going to be looking at in the coming year, what you're going to be focused on as this program takes effect. And we'll talk about that coming up.
Yeah, so a big question is still, what are the next steps? For me, I've been talking to parents in schools. For parents, now they're just in the nitty-gritty of it, and they're researching, they're going online, they're doing school visits, they're just trying to figure out what is the best and affordable option for their students. And a lot of that, it's going to take a year or so. You know, this process still needs to be ironed out by the comptroller's office. So until then, they're just in a waiting game doing the research that they can right now.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting. We're going to be watching how many students take advantage of this program, which students take advantage of this program. I saw there was this tweet from the Arizona Department of Education. In 2022, they estimated around 75% of voucher applicants had never attended a public school. So is this going to be students that were already in private school who are going to benefit from this, or are we going to see an influx of new families?
And that is the great unknown, and that's obviously something that we're going to be watching, but the Texas legislature is also going to be watching. And I was having a discussion with one of the Republican lawmakers who voted for this program, and he said to me that if it turns out that there are mostly students who are part of the program were already in private school, that's going to be a black eye for the state, because the state has really tried to gear this to low-income families and to disabled students. And so if that doesn't happen, and the Democrats were right, that's going to be perhaps problematic for Republican lawmakers. And the other thing that I'm really focused on is right now this program is capped at $1 billion for the first year, the 2026-27 school year. But there have been budgeted forecasts that have alarmed Democrats because those budgets by the state show that it would be as much as $6 billion, a little over $6 billion for the next 2-year period, 27-28 school year, 28-29. And then after that, it would go even higher. For the next 2-year period after that could be up to $8 billion. And I asked the governor about this, and he said that's really going to be up to the legislature to decide how big they want to go, how expensive they want this to go.
Yeah, State Representative Gary Van Dever, one of the Republicans who opposed it, he was concerned about that too. He says we're in a time of surplus. What happens when we're in a time of deficit? And he said, I really don't see us, offering this to students and then pulling the rug out from under them. He says he worries that the cuts in the future, when cuts need to be made, will be coming from public school. So again, it's not just the kids who opt for private school that we're going to be looking at and how they're affected and what benefit they get, but how this affects the kids who stay in public school and the impact there. So
yeah, there are a lot of costs, involved, because, there's still property tax relief that still is impacted every session that people get. And so I think that's definitely going to be something worth watching.
There's definitely a lot of questions, a lot left to flesh out. Jack, Andrea, thank you for joining me in this conversation, a very meaty conversation about school choice. We'll have more for you guys coming up in the next special, and thank you guys for watching at home.